Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Final Down NFL podcast. With me, Jim, Finn, Punk Raider, and Denver Dave. We're talking about NFL boys. How are we doing?
Spiffing.
Beautiful.
Spiffing.
That's
Excellent.
a great word.
Well, three out of my three
That's
teams
a man
won
that
this week,
knows
so-
he's done quite well on a week of Vackers and picks. And
Oh, my accumulators this week, mint. Absolutely mint. I've done really well. So yeah, I'm quite happy.
Excellent. We're here to talk about all of the Week 7 games. So yeah, I'm not going to do any felony watch or injury report or anything. Let's just dive into the games. We'll incorporate stuff as we go along, obviously.
A lack
with
of
trades
injury
and
report
things.
is
I
brilliant.
have to say, I think the injury report from last season is probably the cause. So what we're seeing now with the NFL is so many teams having so many injured players, and I think it's all down to the fact that you used to do an injury report. Players wanted to get on that report so badly that they just started hurting themselves, and now you've not done it this season.
No,
So
you've just cut it.
I've got to bring it back.
I think you should be held solely responsible for the demise of the NFL this season.
It's one of the few things that was cut by popular demand.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the first game of the weekend. That was the Denver Broncos at the New Orleans Saints. So here we go. Dave hasn't been this relaxed on the NFL weekend since that one time he accidentally roofied himself. The Broncos went into New Orleans and got a convincing win over the Saints, relying on their ground game on offense. Well, and the mean defensive front to beat up on the Saints' makeshift O-line. Javonte Williams announced his return with a couple of rushing touchdowns as the Browns were allowed to rack up over 200 rushing yards. The Broncos. They're so easily mixed up. Spencer Rattler was trying his best with his top two receivers out, but there was a couple of sack fumbles, one returned for a score, and the final score was the Broncos 33, Saints 10.
Can I just say, just for the record, all I need to roofie myself is half a pint of Carling, because no illegal substances go in this body. I haven't drank in well over a year. I don't know anything else that illegal. Yeah, it wouldn't take very
Some of those
much.
things should be illegal you put in your body, though. So it's trans fats and things.
No, nothing nowadays. Nothing. I'm a good boy. This game for me was big boy football against a team who are struggling without a lot of their stars, and I think it's really that simple. I'm not going to bang on too much about the game because anyone who's even watched the highlights knows exactly what we're talking about. It was one team who was suffering with injuries, just getting bullied by another team. The one thing that I will say though, and do you remember a few years ago when the entire Broncos quarterback roster was suspended for a game?
Yes.
That was against the Saints.
The Saints. Yeah.
And the Saints came into that game and they were brutal. And they didn't stop. They didn't care the fact that Kendall Hinton was playing at quarterback and he's a wide receiver.
Yep.
They just kept on running it and kept on playing hard and kept on hitting us and hitting us. And I'm not saying there's any layover from that game whatsoever, but it was nice that we didn't let up in the game and we kept on hitting and we kept on playing hard, and it was absolutely relentless because a lot of teams this season we've seen in games have let up a little bit when they know they've won the game and they've stopped playing as hard, for example. So it was good that we didn't do that.
Wasn't Sean Payton the head coach for the Saints in that game?
Yeah. No, that's got nothing to do with it. I don't buy this whole.
What?
I don't buy this whole Sean Payton revenge game. None of this, because
good.
For me
Just
that's somewhat of that's a non-factor. No, the revenge game for me is the fact that they did as hard that game, and it's nice that we returned it. The fact that Sean Payton was head coach is
that's called revenge, Dave.
Nah, not really.
They won that
day. They won that day. How is that revenge? No, I think it was just nice to get a good game out of the way, and we played pretty well all over the field, so it's good.
As you sum the game up perfectly, how would you have seen it if the Saints were at full strength?
It would have been a very different game. Very different game. I still fancy us because Dennis Allen can't put a game plan together. And we're pretty good at the moment at stopping the run. And that's all the Saints really have this season to lean on. But
I disagree.
Disagree. Forget.
If that game's played with two teams at full strength, the Saints are up 14-3 after the first two drives.
Nah.
Broncos have to abandon the run game and then are in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, you're not relying on Bo Nix.
The thing is,
It can, but it'll
the
just go backwards.
Saints, the Saints have not been bad for 1 week. The Saints have been bad for multiple weeks, including when Derek Carr was in, including, when they had a full roster in there. This is not a 1-2 week thing. There's been multiple games when they've not been good.
Let's just say it. Raheem Shaheed ruled out for the season a few hours before the kickoff.
Yeah.
Chris Olave out. Starting centre Eric McCoy and guard Cesar Ruiz as well out. Cornerback Paulson Adebo broke his femur during the game. Out. These are all starters that were not available to.
Yes. They were absolutely ravaged by injury.
Battered.
That's what we said at the beginning. But there's no saying that if they had those plays, they would have won. But it
wouldn't have been 33-10.
I agree. It wouldn't have been. It would have been a lot closer. But I don't think that there's bigger problems at the Saints. Their season's done because I think a lot of players have checked out. There's multiple players there on the fringes, and we're all used to seeing fringe players really, really trying their hardest because they want a roster spot for next season, want a roster spot for next week, and the effort just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. That's not a team that's ravaged by injuries. That's a team that's given up.
Well, Alvin Kamara's checked back in because he's on a new deal with them.
I mean, if someone gives me that kind of money, I'd check in. I'd do it. You won't want to know the things I'd do for that kind of money.
They start with the roofie, though.
Yeah.
Let's move on then to Sunday. And I'm going to go for the Lions versus the Vikings. This game promised so much, and it really delivered one of the closest games you'll see this season. The Vikings were the home team and hoping to keep the unlikely unbeaten streak alive. They got out to a 10-point lead early on their first 2 drives with multiple chunk plays. After the initial shock, the Lions rallied with 3 touchdowns on 3 possessions, 2 for Jahmyr Gibbs, 1 for Amon-Ra St. Brown, as Darnold was also picked by Brian Branch. After a touchdown each to start the second half, the Vikings nudged closer with a couple of field goals before a Lions fumble was recovered for a touchdown or slip 6. Put the Vikings back in the lead by 1 point. It wasn't enough as Detroit moved the ball enough for a game-winning field goal for rookie Jake Bates, and the final score was the Lions 31, Vikings 29.
Great game.
This was game of the season so far. 2 really, really good teams.
Unbelievable game.
Statistically wise, there was nothing between them. I mean, it was a fag paper's width. Altogether, in terms of difference in total yards, there was 8 yards difference between them. There was 3 yards difference in passing. There was 5 yards difference in rushing. The yards per play was only 0.4 out. It was across the board. The stats are identical, and on the field, the game was won in moments, and I can't wait to watch it again.
Yeah, this game was always going to be whoever had the ball last had the best chance of winning.
I agree with that.
And, the Lions having it in the end really kind of helped them. I did think it was slipping away when the Vikings got their fumble return for the touchdown. But yeah, this is 2 good teams playing at an exceptionally high level, giving no quarter. You've got Dan Campbell making ridiculous 4th and 4 calls on the first drive at his own 30-yard line. You've got Sam Darnold and Jared Goff pretty much near as damn it being perfect. I think one's 22 or 25 and the other's 23 or 27 or something. So, it really is a game that if you haven't seen the whole of it, go back and watch it, because it's probably the best 3 hours you're going to get so far this season, and certainly going into next week as well, looking at the slate.
They combined their 44 of 52. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's
ridiculous.
And with those 2 defenses as well. I mean, even the defenses weren't bad. There's points in this game. Brian Branch played out of his skin for the Lions.
It's my favorite player in the NFL.
But it's well worth checking out if you haven't already seen it.
I think the great thing about
and
this
it also
game
creates an interesting race in the division, because now the Vikings have lost one. It puts the Lions on the top just through the head-to-head. So I did look ahead. Conveniently, the NFL have scheduled the rematch for the last week of the season. So we'll see how it goes and what Green Bay has to say about it, and Chicago, I suppose.
Yeah. If the season finished now,
that could be a barnstormer.
If the season finished now, that entire division's in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
And rightly too. They are 4 of the better teams.
Yeah.
Wow. I think with this game, what was really great to see is you always can go into these sorts of games and on paper you go, this is a hell of a matchup. Strap yourselves in, this is going to be a phenomenal game. And we've seen it so many times that it never lives up to the expectation and the hype that is
Mhm.
created pre-game.
Yeah,
But
thanks,
this
Dallas.
was everything but, and it just delivered in every possible way. And like Dave said, I mean, it was near enough identical from both teams that it was just an exciting game of football. And it just, it's the little things that fall your way, or you got the ball at the end, or whatever it is that just make that difference. Um, One thing I did see that I think the Vikings will be slightly disappointed with, obviously outside of losing the game, is normally they are one of the better defenses at stopping the run, but they couldn't contain Jahmyr Gibbs.
Mm.
Um, and so that would be sort of an area that they can sort of focus on moving forward. But ultimately, it's their first loss, arguably their biggest challenge so far. Lions, when they're firing, really do get going, and they've got so many offensive weapons, and they just dominate at the line as well.
Yeah.
So I think all in all, obviously disappointed with the loss. A few things they can pick out, but ultimately a great game.
One point to expand on very quickly what you said on there. It was almost a perfect game. I think the score makes it perfect as well. The fact it was 29-31 and not 44-44, because if it's that score, it means the defenses were crap.
Yeah.
Whereas this was at the right level where there was loads of points for the people who love offense, and then
Yeah,
loads of points for the weirdos who only like defense, bunk who loves
Yep.
defense. Because there was still some really good defensive plays in there, really
Oh, there
good.
was.
Mm.
It's
I
kind of
mean,
the difference in soccer where a 2-2 draw is better than a 5-2 draw. If 5-2 draw just means you've got two crap teams who are just tonking each other. Whereas this was at the right level. It was I don't want to say perfect, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
We'll have to move on.
Yeah.
So we'll go on to another very good
This
game.
this game though does deserve a little bit more time. I think we could
Yeah,
skip
yeah,
over
yeah.
some of the other games.
Well, let's not skip the next one. It was the Texans at the Packers, a really close game between two teams that are now 5-2. Houston was getting it done against the Packers' run defense. Joe Mixon gashing them repeatedly for 115 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. But the Packers' pass rush was getting home too. 4 sacks on CJ Stroud and 11 tackles for loss. Had him skittish with his throws. Jordan Love had another typical hero ball game. He got picked inside the first 2 minutes of the game and was picked on a moon ball in the second quarter as well. There could always have been more, but touchdowns for Tucker Kraft, Dontavian Wicks, and Josh Jacobs set Green Bay up for a last-second field goal winner from just out of court, Brandon McManus. The final score was the Texans 22, Packers 24.
Another good game.
Another great game.
decent game,
Top one at the
but
top.
in contrast to the one we've just been talking about, the Texans' pass offense never got going at all. I think Stroud was under 50%. I'm not even sure he passed over 100 yards in the end.
I
It
don't think he
was
did, no.
they were really kind of reliant on that run game, and thankfully for the Texans, it worked. But the passing offense since Nico Collins has been injured for the Texans has really been a bit. I wouldn't say shoddy, but it's very spotty. There's no real consistency to it at all,
He reminds me a bit. Do you
which
remember
is a
when
bit
Will
weird when
Fuller?
you've got Tank Dell. I mean, Tank Dell this week in fantasy scored zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally didn't get a point because he cost me 2 games because of it. But you know, even Stephon Diggs, you've got Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell on the field plus Mixon. You'd think, well, you should be able
Be
to
able
pass
to
the
do.
ball as well as run it. But no, the Packers were good. I thought the Packers looked excellent. Jordan Love still, to me, is inconsistent. He makes throws he shouldn't make, and he gets away with it as well, which is probably the
Mhm.
most galling thing.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's very random. It's very weird the way he gets away with it where other quarterbacks wouldn't. But yeah, it's a good game, excellent game to watch as a neutral. But I just wonder what's going on with the Texans offense.
I think
Do
they're
you remember?
struggling with the line again. It's,
Yeah.
they're just allowing yes, Stroud is sort of struggling to hit um his receivers, and he's got pieces there that if he can find them, they're going to sort of move the ball so much more efficiently. But at the same time, there's just that he's not been given the time to find them as well. And he's just being pressured on an awful amount of snaps. Um, he's also, sacks. They're allowing too many sacks, and eventually they're going to run the risk that they get him injured, and there's their star QB out, and then there's very little hope that the receiving core are going to get any deep balls or any passes to them. So if they can shore that up and start finding the receivers, then they'll get back into their groove of being a free-flowing offense as well, and racking up points nice and easy.
You saying you got no faith in Davis Mills to step in?
Wow.
No.
Leave it at that.
Going back to the Nico Collins point, do you remember when the Texans had Will Fuller, and he was basically there just to take the top off the defense and create space? I think Nico Collins does a similar role, and it's so unsung, because all he's basically doing is just running cones, where he's just constantly running backwards and forwards, and it does massively help. But if Bo Nix came out of a game 10 of 21 for 86 yards and no touchdowns, you lot would be killing him. So just saying, it was a really bad game. But the pressure rate for the Texans last week wasn't as bad as we think. They were sort of mid-table.
All right, can I just have a quick defense of us then, guys? If Bo Nix had those stats but played the way that CJ Stroud was playing, then I would defend him. But CJ Stroud was hitting people in the chest and it was bouncing off them. He was scrambling for his life. The O-line was not helping him in this game. Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator for the Packers, has done a great job this season. And he had them running through the lines consistently. And, CJ Stroud was doing all he could. I don't think it was the same way as like Bo Nix hitting between the grass in between the tight end and a wide open receiver kind of thing. There was not that kind of throw from CJ Stroud.
The funny thing was, if he was hitting the numbers, it'd be like, oh, it's because your wide receivers are shit. So there's always a part to it. I'm half jesting, but at the same time, he's a lot better than he showed. He's a lot better than he showed in this game.
Yeah, but he still was doing all right in the game. Like I said, well, when you get sacked 4 times, you get more skittish with the throws. Like I said in the review, he started to get a bit too antsy with getting the ball out. The play clock internally went up for him a little bit, So he had to get the ball out quicker. It leads to more mistakes. It's a cycle that the defensive coaches want to see in the opposing quarterback. But there we go. A good win there for the Packers. Let's move on to the Chiefs at the 49ers. Those Chiefs just keep finding ways to win, this time in San Fran, and it wasn't as close as the 10-point scoreline would have you thinking. Not a great start. Not a great Saturday for Mahomes. 2 picks and no passing touchdowns made for head-scratching reading. But he did have a couple of big impact plays, including the execution of Malik Mustafa's career as he ran him over for a touchdown. You know who had a worse game at QB? Brock Purdy. 3 bad picks and a QBR of 13.4. Don't care that he got 2 quarterback sneak touchdowns. The Niners couldn't get a rhythm going, and Trent Williams went for an early shower as well, having seen enough. The final score here was the Chiefs 28, 49ers 18.
Only a fool would pick the 49ers.
Only a fool would try and punch Trent Williams and then stand there and take one back.
Well, if your name's Savage, you've got to give it a go.
Well, I think the Chiefs were lucky to play a Niners team in this current state where they are ripped to pieces with injuries, and they are nowhere near the well-oiled machine we've seen in the past. I know that the 49ers really struggled against the Chiefs anyway. I don't think they've won in the last sort of 5 meets or whatever it is.
That's right.
So they struggled anyway, but this was made so much easier on the Chiefs in the fact that the Niners just aren't showing up at the moment, which is, well, I love it because a long way to continue, and hopefully we can increase the gap as the season goes on. But at the same time, I look at the Chiefs and I'm also thinking if they would play if this was a half decent side or a Niners side firing, then they win this game because the Chiefs are also not looking good at all at the moment. And Mahomes, yes, had a couple of plays where he scrambled and made things happen, but he's nowhere near his level that we've seen of years gone as well. So how they're unbeaten, who knows? There's probably some brown envelopes being exchanged somewhere.
It's just that luck voodoo, isn't it? Of a team that happens to play injured teams at the right times. I mean, picking up on the San Francisco stuff, if I'd said to you at the start of the game, Jacob Cowing would be your second highest receiver, you'd have all looked at me and gone, "Who?" So
Weren't you the bloke driving the Bronco during OJ's car chase?
Yeah, more likely than not. More likely than
Sure,
not.
it was
But
Cowling.
behind Kittle, he was the Niners' highest receiver with 50 yards.
Everyone's
So
got injuries. Chiefs have been through loads of injuries as
but
well.
no. You look at the
Yeah, but not to
49ers
this.
injury list, and it is a lot
Saints are
longer than
worst.
anybody else's.
Saints
It
are
really
worst.
is.
I struggle to feel sorry for the 49ers because they've got all those
No one
Avengers
said we feel
because
sorry for them. I definitely don't.
Well,
We're just stating the facts, Jim.
it's
That's a
decimated by
fact. You
injuries.
can't.
It's because they're paying their quarterback £2.50 to play this year, so they can pay everyone else an absolute fortune.
No, coming off this game slightly, I want to make a wider prediction because I love a theory.
Yeah,
I think that pretty soon, maybe not the end of this season, but maybe the season after, I think Kyle Shanahan walks away from the 49ers. They've got a quarterback they're going to have to pay. They've got all of their talent is now coming up towards being paid. So Dre Greenlaw is going to want a new or retired. And they're just not going to be able to afford everyone. And they've given away draft picks because of the likes of having to draft Trey Lance. And it's all coming home. And he's just going to say, I need a break from football. And he's going to walk away, rock up at a new, fresh team and start putting everything back together again. But I think the 49ers are in win now mode because the future's not looking all that great.
Well, the 49ers have been in win now mode for about 4 years.
Yeah, they've just never won now. That's the problem.
The problem they've got, like you
can't.
said at the start of the season, is that exactly as you say, everyone's now getting paid, and it's starting to tighten and shorten that window of availability that they're going to have. So yes, you are right. The 49ers are over the, and even this season are going to take a step back. But I do think in this game in particular, the Chiefs got a little bit lucky in that the 49ers were so decimated on offense that they couldn't get anything going. They couldn't get the rhythm going. And even the Chiefs, yes, they've got their injuries at wide receiver and stuff, but it was really only Mahomes running that was keeping drives alive. And that 49ers defense didn't actually do that bad a job. They were just on the field far too much. I think reasonable game. I still, like you, Finn, don't quite understand how the Chiefs are undefeated this season. It feels like there should be teams out there that are cohesive enough and playing well enough to be able to beat them, but they just haven't come up against them yet.
Yeah, the Chiefs are just doing the right things in the right moments. It feels dirty saying that, but they're winning the games at the right times. They'll be rubbish for an hour, and then they'll put together a run, put up 20 points. No one can get back. But they're a defense first team now. Make no mistake about that.
Well, they were last year. That's what they lean on. That's what they lean on. But of course, they are trying to strengthen things, and they've just traded for DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans for a 5th-round pick that could become a 4th-round pick. Hopkins was in the last year of his current contract with the Titans. So apparently the Titans are eating a lot of that contract, but they'll have to renegotiate something for next season. And they haven't told us what the stipulation is for the 4th round. Maybe it's a win a Super Bowl or something.
Well, it's pretty much Hopkins' last chance, let's be honest.
That guy deserves a ring, though, right? I mean, he is a class wide receiver. He had to put up with all the worst quarterbacks in the world in Houston. Sorry, Dave, but he did.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Let's not forget how good Deshaun Watson was at the time.
I'm not talking about Deshaun Watson. I'm talking before Deshaun Watson.
Even so, okay, so he lost Deshaun Watson. He lost all the quarterbacks he had before that.
Tom Savage.
Tom Savage. But then got Deshaun Watson for a 4 or 5 year period, and they couldn't win a Super Bowl.
Matt Shaw.
Well, let me bleed my heart out, shall I? He's placed the Chiefs. I don't want him to win. He doesn't deserve
Get the tiny violins out.
Get out of it.
I want to see that guy win a Super Bowl ring. So there we go. Let's move on. Let's go to the London game. The Patriots at the Jaguars. The last London game for this season, and maybe the last one ever at Wembley. Signed off with 2 1-5 teams facing off. The Patriots were looking good after 2 long drives on the offense, ending in a touchdown pass to Jermichael Hasty and a field goal from Joey Sly in between a 3 and out for the Jags. At this point, I was more inclined to watch the blood draining from Mark's face as a long-suffering Jags fan. But the Jags were about to do something that no one's seen from them in a long time. They reeled off 3 scores before the half. Rookie receiver Brian Thomas Jr. was cooking and got a touchdown catch. Tank Bigsby got one on the ground, and Parker Washington returned a New England punt 96 yards for a franchise record return. The Patriots were rocked, and it took until midway through the fourth quarter before they could score again. But in their desperation to tie the score, they allowed another Tank Bigsby touchdown to salt the game. The final score from Wembley was the Patriots 16, Jags 32.
Brian Thomas Jr. is doing wonders in my fantasy.
He's doing all right for the Jags.
There is. No, I thought the Patriots looked all right for the first quarter, and then it was almost as if the Jags went, all right, I guess we better turn up now, and just kind of ran away with it. The Patriots looked a bit shell-shocked after the second touchdown went in, and when the third one went in, it was almost like, oh, well, let's just get back on the plane and go home. I don't know what it looked like from your point of view, Jim, and I know we're going to have differing views on this, but I thought Drake May looked all right.
Well, we will have differing views.
Yeah, no, he seemed to be making the right reads. He wasn't trying to overcomplicate the game. It looked like he was doing everything you'd expect a rookie quarterback to do. So, I know you'll sit there and say he's dreadful, this, that, and the other, but from what I've seen, and that's the first time I've watched him for a full game.
We saw him in the Texans game. And in that second half, he reeled off a few touchdowns. And I was expecting to see quite a dangerous rookie turning up and launching the ball down the field and taking some shots at a Jags defense, which hasn't been performing. What I saw live was a guy that he might be making the right reads. He might be looking at the right receiver and throwing the ball in the right way. But the ball is going out so slowly that the defense can catch up to his pass and either bat it down or intercept it. And it was quite incredible to see how slow that ball was moving.
Fair enough.
I saw something on Twitter that said his pass attempts were hanging like punts, which I thought was quite a nice little section. But I think the issue that I've got with Drake May, and I'm not to disparage him, I'm not a fan of his in any way, shape, or form. I'm not quite on the level of Will Levis. It's incredibly hard for your second start to be in London. So I'm giving him the best, biggest hallway pass you can possibly imagine. He could have come in and on 22 passes thrown 22 touchdowns, and I'd still say I give him a pass on the game. Maybe not.
I bet on him to win.
Well, that's because you're an idiot.
I'm not an idiot. But...
Hey, man, I bet on the 49ers. What do you want me to say?
Oh, yeah, it's not an easy thing to start your first season and be playing away like that.
But there's second and third year quarterbacks playing in London in your second ever game. The second, third year quarterbacks will struggle with that. It's really hard.
It's gonna be more hard to see that your coach came out and called the entire team soft after the game.
Yeah,
that's not a word that head coaches use very often, especially about the entire team. But
the word linebacker,
tough love.
I mean, he's got enough credit in that building to be able to do that. If you're a coach coming in, and you're not part of that organization, then that's different to someone like Gerard Mayo, who is part of the foundations of that team for both when he played for them and when he's coached. So I think he can probably get away with it for now. But let's not make a habit of it, yeah.
Unfortunately. We're going to move on. So we're going to go to the Jets at the Steelers. Oh, the New York Jets.
Brilliant.
2-5. Lost 4 in a row. Sacked your head coach.
This
traded for every Packers wide receiver in the last 10 years. And you still get whipped by a guy who hasn't played for a year. Sad times. It took a little while for us to warm up, during which time the Jets got themselves a touchdown run from Breece Hall and a catch from Tyler Conklin to be up 15-6. But then we saw not one, but 2 moments of brilliance from undrafted free agent Beanie Bishop. That same Beanie Bishop we were ripping against the Cowboys. Picking Rodgers either side of halftime, while the Steelers piled on 4 touchdowns and a field goal down the stretch. As the Jets stalled, I wonder who Rodgers will blame this week. The final score was the Jets 15, Pittsburgh Steelers 37.
Well done.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
think it was a great performance, and I think this is exactly the performance that Russell Wilson needed.
Mm.
For the context, I was talking to someone about this the other day who's a Steelers fan, and I was saying for the context, he said, "Oh, that must have hurt." And I said, "Well, no, not really, because it's exactly what you expect. You got to remember that Russell Wilson is a proud, proud man. He's a guy who's won Super Bowls, been a franchise quarterback, and all he's heard for the past year is you're rubbish.
Mm.
The Broncos were right to get rid of you, and he's been embarrassed by the fact that the Broncos have eaten the most amount of dead cap in history. You are a quiz question. So go out and prove that you're right, that you were right, that you're still good. This is exactly the type of performance I expected him to put in. Few ropey moments, lean on what you think you're good at.
Mhm.
He did the right thing. Well done to him.
I think, yeah,
Just for the
absolutely.
record, there are no hard feelings whatsoever.
Oh,
He's an
good.
ex-girlfriend who I wish well on. I wish him all the best.
I think as Dave says, there's, you got to take your hat off to what he's done for considering that for the past year he's not played. Um, he then got traded, and then also Fields comes in, so he immediately comes in and goes, right, I'm not just coming here and I can sort of sit pretty and I'm going to be a regular starter. I've got to fight for my place because Fields is also there who is going to want to be the regular starter. So he's had to work hard, and you could see at the start of the game there was a few moments where he had lost the touch, but he quickly got rid of that rust, and fell back to what he's good at. And you can see the plays he was making, sort of glimpses back to when he was in a lovely team in the Pacific Northwest. But
Yeah, I mean, if I'm him, I'm buying George Pickens like a Rolex or something because
Yeah.
Pickens, like he made a couple of long catches. I think they were both Pickens, where Pickens' adjustments and catches made them look
Mhm.
pretty good. But hey, man, he still threw the ball there, so you got to give him credit.
Yeah.
I'm kind of I was pleased to see that Devontae Adams had a good impact for the Jets. Um, he made a fantastic tackle off one of the Rodgers
He certainly
Hey,
did. Yeah.
hey man,
save
Yeah,
he's
he did that well.
you've got to
um,
remember though, he's coming off an injury.
and yeah. I mean
I
that
couldn't even
that
say it
that
without
massive
laughing.
hamstring injury that he had.
He
And
was running wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
I did some of the facial expressions that he had on the sideline whilst Pickens is making catches and doing bits were
Mm.
absolutely fantastic. If you thought Richard Sherman in the Super Bowl was good,
Yeah.
this was equally as fun.
Not
Do
fair
you
for
know?
Dante. He lost to the Steelers twice in 2 weeks. So,
Yeah.
We didn't because he didn't play in the first one, did he?
Do you know when every now and again you play Madden on career mode or something like that, and you think my team's really good, I built it well, I need a new challenge, and you swap to a new team, and after your first game you're thinking, bloody hell, what did I go here for? That's what Devontae Adams is doing, but he's doing it in real life.
Mm.
Exactly that.
Well, the chances of you lot getting bumped up to a second round pick, by the way, they've gone for a Burton. So
Yeah, they've pretty much gone now, haven't they?
I don't think there's any chance of him being an all pro, and they're definitely not going to be in the championship game. So
Where
Yeah.
are the Jets? They're what, two games behind the Bills now, is it? Two or three?
yeah, even
So
still, they'll
they'll have to win both the head-to-heads.
This is the first time I'm going to say
Yeah.
this, but I think I agree with the consensus now that Rodgers is washed because it's been now 2 or 3 games in a row where I've seen literally nothing from him that suggests he's Aaron Rodgers. He looks like a completely different
Because
quarterback.
he's a GM at the
Mm.
same time and a
Yeah.
It's true.
OC and a head
Head coach.
coach, and
I mean, to be fair to him, he looked pretty good in the
Scout.
second half in London. But the problem then was that the receivers were dropping all the
Yeah.
balls. So, I'm not sure he can. It'd be interesting to see what they do when they come up against maybe a less accomplished defense, whether it starts coming together for them or not. But yeah, I don't think anyone's going to be kind of clamoring to get Rodgers from the Jets at the end of the season.
No.
As we're talking more big picture, Finn and I were talking last night about Russell Wilson and about, well, you asked me what I thought might happen next with him, Finn.
I did. Do you remember your response?
I do, because I wasn't drunk at the time. And
Nor was I. My drinking sort of ramped up after this conversation.
yeah. I posited that maybe now, if you're a sensible businessman, this is where your stock is the highest. And so if you're going to trade him, now's the time to do it. have a ring around some of these teams that need a quarterback, like the Raiders, for example.
Well, I said no, we wouldn't take him because we played him when he was at the Broncos. We know how bad he is. I said
Tom
2, 3
Brady,
weeks
Tom Brady
ago.
now is your minority owner will come
Yeah,
in and
but
go,
I said
I think I can do
if you
something.
recall, I said 2, 3 weeks ago the Dolphins would be the perfect fit for him.
Not if Tua's back.
Well, this is to
Well,
be
won't be back for a
I'd call
long
the
bit.
Dolphins as well. I'd call the Dolphins as well. But you're about to get some more draft picks from the Lions for Max Crosby, so you might as well use a couple of them.
Giants.
Max
Yeah,
Crosby's not going anywhere.
of course he is.
Yes,
You might as well get
Giants.
a. If you can give us a second round pick for Russell Wilson, and I'd be very happy with that.
No one's giving you a second round pick
They
for
might
Russell
do.
Wilson. No one's
After
giving
that
you.
They'll give you a
performance.
second round
After that
pick in the
performance.
Tim,
2029
you seem
NFL
to think that
draft.
Give off.
Pittsburgh live in this little bubble where no one else
No,
can
no.
see
I
in.
was
No one's
definitely a
ever
bubble.
seen these players before, and the fact that they have one decent game doesn't
He's
suddenly
got
make
tread on the
available
tires.
good
Thing is,
commodities.
what Jim's also not telling you is after this conversation about where he could go, Jim then said, "But he'll just stay and we'll win the Super Bowl, so then he can
I
go
was
after that."
joking.
That
I
sounds
was
very
joking.
much like how that conversation would go.
Yeah.
I was hoping you were too drunk to remember that, but I was only joking.
No, as I said, I'd only had a couple by that point. You didn't stick around for long after,
I mean,
so
for me, a couple's a death sentence, but I'm no surprise you needed to get completely pissed after that. I would as well.
I was kidding. I was kidding.
oh yeah,
We're never sure though, Jim. That's the
Good game.
problem.
yeah.
No, I think to sum up the game though, really, really, really good, solid performance from the Steelers in most areas of the field. So yeah, well done to them. It's not very often you can come up against a good team like the Jets and embarrass them, and that's exactly what they did.
We were underdogs as well at home. Weird. Next game is the Seahawks at the Falcons. Are the Seahawks
Oh,
good?
finally a good game.
Are the Seahawks good? Are the Falcons good? I don't know. But the Seahawks did manage to snap a 3-game losing streak in Atlanta thanks to a productive run game and a nice final drive before halftime that ended with a DK Metcalf touchdown catch that had them up by 10 points at the break. The Falcons were having lots of joy on the ground too. Bijan Robinson had 103 rushing yards and a touchdown, while Tyler Algier was averaging over 7 yards a carry. But it was Kenneth Walker who stood out in this one, a rushing touchdown and turning wide receiver for his second of the game, 93 scrimmage yards and surely the game ball. Final score was the Seahawks 34, Falcons 14.
Nice to get back to winning ways.
It's been a while.
Needed a game to steady the ship, and this was exactly it. I mean, last week I talked about the lines and how unimpressed I was, and they were so different this week. A big thing. I think it's since week 3. So it was the first time we've had our front four on the defensive line actually start and finish a game, which is a big difference. Byron Murphy was back. He was brilliant.
Yeah.
But I want to shout out Mike Jarrell, who played right tackle. I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. He was cut and dry.
I've never even heard of him, let alone
Well,
He
anything
was their
else.
last draft pick.
He was our
in
last
this year's
6th
draft.
round pick. But compared particularly against Forsyth, he is a different beast. He was everything that went well, particularly the run game. When Kenneth was running well, it all went down the right. And that's all because of him. He was just a different beast. He just actually made it look like we had no line for once. And that was a breath of fresh air. Gino was Gino, did his thing. We saw Smith and Jigma have a go at QB,
Yeah,
which was
did all right.
quite the sight. I suppose the only downer really is the fact that DK's done something in his knee, which is week by week, I think, is what we've come out and said. So hopefully it's not serious
So-
because he's a beast when he gets going.
Knowing him, he was probably kicking someone in the head as they were laying down, right? That tends to be what he does.
I don't know. He's not a hothead at all.
Yeah, not much. From an Atlanta point of view, I'm still really disappointed with this season. I'm not massively buying into them yet. It's just not.
These two teams are kind
Going.
of mirrors of each other, in
Yeah.
that they've both got offenses that you look at on paper and go, "There's no reason why they can't score 40 points in every single game," and then they quite often will flatter to deceive. And whether it's passes going astray, or I don't know. It's weird, but they are almost mirror images of each other. Kirk Cousins, he'll have one good game. No, he won't have a good game. I don't think he's had a good game yet. I think he's had all right games, but it doesn't feel like he's completely settled in there yet. Whether that's to do with the Achilles injury or anything, I don't know. But he just doesn't look settled, and very similar in the way that Gino will suddenly have a game where he's really erratic and throw a couple of interceptions for no apparent reason. It feels like the Kirk Cousins is doing roughly the same thing. Now, I fully expect Atlanta next week to turn up and win by 10 or something, but it's a strange one, the Falcons this season, because on paper you look at it and they've got all the pieces that you would need. They've got extremely talented offense. They've got some really good defenders, Jeremy Bates and Jude.
And they've spent a fortune on that offensive line as
Jesse
well.
Bates. Yeah, so the Falcons are a little bit of an enigma at the minute for me, but I still think they're. I mean, it's the NFC South, so it's only really them and the Bucks that are ever going to be in the playoff race for this season. So it'd be interesting to see if once you get to the halfway point, they actually kind of turn the corner or not, or whether they stay as an inconsistent, difficult team for playoff teams.
I agree.
The next three I've got here, I've labeled into bin games, as in get in there. We're going to start with the Raiders at the Rams. The news doesn't seem to get any better for the Raiders lately. Aidan O'Connell goes out of the game with a broken thumb, leaving them with Gardner Minshew to throw 3 picks and lose a fumble. Max Crosby might be heading to Detroit, and they lose a 1-5 Rams team with no starting receivers. Still, good game for their kicker, Daniel Carlson, who got all 15 points to them in this one. Oh, and some might say better game for Rams running back Kyren Williams, who scored twice in this one to make it 9 consecutive games with a rushing touchdown. The final score was the Raiders 15, Rams 20.
I think the big thing for me in this game is that the Rams were struggling to beat the Raiders, even though the Raiders turned the ball over 4 times. It was, regardless of whether O'Connell was in there or Minshew was in there or how the Raiders were playing, we didn't have Jacoby Myers either, which was our first receiver now. But the Raiders were causing problems and then just shooting themselves in the foot, whereas the Rams, they weren't really managing to do much at all on offense. So I think, obviously injuries are a big part of that, and they'll be hoping that Kupp and Co come back sooner rather than later. But I do worry about the Rams in that if they don't have their full strength offense out, unless a team helps them to do it, they're not going to win many games.
How much of this do you reckon was? This is going to sound really insulting. It's not meant to be that way. It's not because it's the Raiders. How much of it do you think was the Rams playing down? Because when you're playing against a team who's making so many errors,
Rams are just poor, mate.
No, the Rams.
Listening to you,
Rams were genuinely a bad team. I don't think they were playing down. They've done similar against who was it? Was it the Cardinals or the Packers a couple of weeks ago? Where they just couldn't get out their own way. They just can't catch passes. They can't move the ball. If it's not Kyren Williams running for 7 yards straight down the middle and beating 3 players, they've got nothing. They've got absolutely nothing. The Raiders helped them out completely with Minshew's 4 turnovers, but even on the Raiders side, we were moving the ball. You could see what the running game was starting to work a bit more. Nate Hobbs had a really good game as well at cornerback. It was kind of one of those stupid. You're right, getting the bin games because the football itself was not good. But if you're a fan of either team, you've got to kind of sit there and go, I don't think either team really deserved to win that. It's just the Raiders gave it to the Rams with the silly turnovers.
And it was a home game for the Raiders, by the way.
It's always a home.
The shots of the crowd were
always a home game.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but the same thing's true back at the Allegiant Stadium because everyone invades your stadium.
This is the problem. Right. This is the problem with having franchises that move around so much.
Yeah,
we spent so long in Oakland, LA, and even the move from Oakland to LA. You know, LA's never been a big football town, and no matter how often the NFL try and push a team in there, you know, back in the 80s, it was the Rams and the Raiders, you know, and even then, the Rams were getting half-filled stadiums and the Raiders were selling out. So it's only ever really been the Raiders that has captured the LA market. So I was really surprised when we went to Vegas and didn't go back to LA, and it was the Chargers that went to LA instead.
Well, they beat
That
you
to
to
me
it.
made no sense at all. But this is happening more and more in the NFL, in that fans are traveling to away games, especially in cities where you can have a nice weekend away and so on and so forth. So,
Yeah.
it, if you watch the 49ers game, there's a lot of Chiefs fans in that stadium. Pittsburgh, even the Vikings and Lions,
Same happens with the
there's a lot of Lions.
Giants. If you look at Giants and Jets, if you look at New York Stadium, more often than not, there's a humongous amount of away jerseys just because people travel to that city. Tends
Travel
not
to
to
New York
happen
for the
in,
weekend. Oh, let's take in a game.
yeah, it tends not to
Yeah.
happen in, Indianapolis, because who goes to Indianapolis?
Exactly. But
It's only
it
the
is
diehard
happening
fans.
more and more. It's kind of a weird phenomenon that started happening. It's kind of
Happens a
only
lot
really,
more
I
in
would
some
say, the
cities,
last three
though.
or 4 years where it's been happening in bulk like that.
Mm.
You'd always have little pockets of away fans and stuff, but not to the degree that we're seeing at the minute.
Maybe it's seat sharing apps and stuff.
Yeah, Indianapolis versus the Chargers. There's one Chargers fan in the stands just looking nervously around.
The Chargers fan. Anyway, next bin game, and it's the Bengals at the Browns. With 1 minute 26 remaining in the first half, down 7-0 at home, Deshaun Watson dropped back to pass, but not all of him stepped up to make the throw, as his Achilles said nope. Cue Browns fans cheering in the stands after booing his entrance to the game. Call it karma, but their backup Dorian Thompson-Robinson got injured later in the game. Not sure what just returned from a year-long injury Nick Chubb was thinking out there, despite Chubb getting a score and Jameis Winston finding David Njoku in garbage time, since he had just enough points in the bag. The final score was the Bengals 21, Browns 14.
Fantastic
No one won this
to
game.
see Nick Chubb back.
Yeah.
After his what could have been a career-ending horrible injury.
Yeah.
To even get him back on a field is fantastic news. And he actually picked up 9.5 fantasy points as well.
Been on my bench for 7 weeks. So
yeah, he has on mine as well, on one of mine. But yeah, interesting that the Browns fans are now getting what they want, but it's through injury. And adios, Derek. See you later,
for
mate.
now.
This screws the Browns big time. They can't trade him. They can't do anything with him now.
Not that they were going to trade him anyway. But
I mean, it removes the possibility that some
Yes.
idiot owner is going to go, we've got so much cap space. I'll use I'm saying idiot owner. This is not connected to that. I'm just going to say the Raiders have an enormous amount of cap space. They could very easily say to him, and I think it'd be sensible to do so, we'll take over his contract, but we want 5 first-round picks.
If I'm not taking
Why the hell not?
Wilson, we're not taking
Russell
Derek
Wilson.
Watson.
No. You
don't
take
need
him
both
and then
of them.
cut him. You
Take
don't
Russ.
actually. You literally take him and get rid. You don't want him. So don't even come to
I
the
don't want him
building.
infecting our building.
You just want 5 first-round picks. You know, it will take 3 seconds while we're at it. Thank you very
Tell you
much.
what, you roofie him, and then you can do what you like with him.
he must have some spare.
Seems highly unlikely.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the
No,
cap
but
hit
but he
next
just
2
re- he
years is
just
72.5 million. No matter what. 72.5 million of dead cap on the Browns.
The only thing they can do is to restructure it and push it further down the line. That's the only thing they
Yeah,
can
but you
do.
still got to pay it eventually.
Just
Yeah,
kicking the can down the road.
Well,
Yeah.
the cash has already been paid because you have to put it into that holding account. I can't remember what it's called now. That's already been paid. It's just the cap hit.
Escrow.
Yeah. See, the money's already there. The Haslams have managed to scrimp up that money together somehow. But now it's all about, okay, well, what can they do? They restructure his contract, put it over the next 8 years, for example, and then kick him out the door and just swallow the dead cap for the next 8 years. There's nothing else you can really do. But screw him. It's their own fault.
Well, it's definitely their own fault. But I did, when it first happened, when he first got signed, I think we all were of the opinion that we just wanted him to get injured as soon as possible. But the reality we've had has been so much better of watching him just fail for the last 2 years. I don't want him to be injured. I want him to keep going out there every week and stinking up the place. I want him to be having the stat
I
lines he
have
was
to
having.
admit, I did rewind the injury 4 times just to make sure I was
Oh.
right, and it was his Achilles that went. And you can see the shudder as it goes up through his calf. So yeah,
Oh,
it was definitely his Achilles that went.
Yeah.
I
cheers,
mean,
Doc.
They can
not to be
diagnose that on the
gruesome
field, can't
about
they?
it or
I don't know why
anything,
they
but
spent so long talking about it. It was definitely done. And then he's talking about using Aaron Rodgers as doctor. So that's at least a year, despite Aaron Rodgers
There you
saying he'll
go.
come back in 6 weeks.
He'll probably start appearing on every podcast as well.
Yeah. The reason I put this down as a bin game rather than the paddling was because the Bengals are terrible as well. If you take out that Charlie Jones 100-yard kickoff return at the start, that's 14-all. They couldn't do anything against this Browns team. And the Browns are looking
to be fair, the Browns'
hopeless.
defense is not dreadful.
It's not great either.
No,
And
but
it's got good pieces. They're just not
a
playing
fairly
well.
decent defense. So
I've said this before. They're an emotional team, and if they're not playing well, then they don't have the leaders on that defense or offense to kind of drag them out into a game and get a win.
I think
Myles
with
Garrett
this
is not a leader in that respect.
this was a game where the Bengals could have just gone what Dave said earlier about just being ruthless and still going 100% all of the time. This was a game where the Bengals could have easily done that against a subpar Browns team and racked up a great amount of points and would be at the end of the game sitting pretty, going, right,
Yep.
got a mojo back. This is how we play. Just, confidence, and I hate to go back to the word that Dave was throwing about last week, but momentum. If they can get up a hell of a load of points in this
Yeah.
and start getting that feeling back of, right, this is how we play, this is our identity, this is how we move forward, then that's going to benefit them over the next few weeks. But as we've seen, they just struggled to beat the Browns.
Browns
Yeah.
have
They
had that
just
number
make
the last
life
few
hard
years
on
as well.
themselves.
They haven't beaten the Browns in about 5 goes. So
And you're right, the Bengals haven't had any
first win
momentum
for
for
Burrow.
18 months. They've not been good. This is their perfect chance to then go, right, we're going to do you, and we're going to be relentless, and we're going to absolutely be non-stop. And yeah, you're right. You're 100% right.
Couldn't do it. Yeah. There's one more bin game. I promised it. Here it comes. And it is the Dolphins at the Colts. The suffering of the Miami Dolphins continues, dropping 4 of their last 5 games now, this time in Indy. It doesn't help when you have to go to Tim Boyle at quarterback due to Huntley getting injured. Tyreek Hill was targeted twice, caught 1 pass for 8 yards. They were lucky the Colts had been struggling too. No Jonathan Taylor hurt them, but they scored just enough as the Dolphins fumbled twice, missed a field goal, and threw the ball out of bounds on the 4th down with 11 seconds left. Or maybe Ball wasn't trying to throw it out of bounds. We'll never know. The final score was the Dolphins 10, Colts 16.
What an inspiring game.
No, I have a real serious question. We don't have to spend forever on it, but I'm getting to the point where I'm going, is Anthony Richardson actually improving?
No.
To me, it just looks like he's not learning anything. He's not, whereas Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, all these other guys, you can see progression within, well, the short time they've been in the league. He's had a year sat on the sideline where he should have been learning and has now played, 10 games maybe? I don't see anything different from day one when he walked in the building. I'm a bit worried for the Colts that they may have put their eggs in the wrong basket.
I think he's got his style of play, and when he plays like that, in the sort of the explosive plays and the freak plays, when he's doing that, he's brilliant. But when you get him to try and be more reserved and play sensible and play a more balanced offense, that's when he seems to sort of hit a ceiling and not be able to do it, and it isn't showing the progression like we've seen, like with Caleb, like you said, the fact that the start of the year, he looked rough, he looked, he looked new, but actually him and the OC and the rest of the Bears have sort of nurtured it and said, right, this is how we need to move forward, and you can see the clear change. Whereas Richardson is, yeah, great at doing something you wouldn't expect, but actually let's keep it sensible for this game. And then it's just meh.
I better defend him because obviously I'm a big fan of Anthony Richardson. you're right. He has had a year since he got injured last season, his rookie season, gets injured early on. With a guy like Shane Steichen, you'd expect that they would be joined at the hip, basically, and he would be just sponging everything he can to know what's going on. What I would say in his defense is that he was injured all the way up basically to week 1. He didn't have a proper training camp through this off season to really actually get the reps in with the first team. Jonathan Taylor was holding out until, a couple of days before the season started as well. So the rapport he should have with the best other player on offense isn't quite there yet. And now Jonathan Taylor's injured again. He needs that full complement. It's not a massively talented side on offense. He needs better pieces around him.
I agree with that.
But I think that there are too many good pieces there. So I want to see how they do the next couple of weeks. They've got the Texans next. They're likely not to win that game, but I want to pay attention to what they're going to do on offense and how they're going to react to that Texans defense. So I'm not out on Richardson. It's disappointing. Yeah, no, absolutely, it's disappointing.
I'm not out on him entirely. I'm surprised there's been no real obvious step forward.
Me too, because there's been some explosive plays from him, but
there's no doubt in that physically he's incredible. But the problem is, as good as he is physically, is as bad as he is playing quarterback, because he's missing absolute layups. His completion percentage is like 47% or something like that. He's not showing any signs of progression, but he has massive capabilities. I don't think there's anyone in this room who's going to sit there and say there's more than enough upside to keep hold of him and keep working on him. It's not like Will Levis, where it's just pure brain farts.
You've got to give him time.
Will Levis does not have the capability to be an NFL quarterback in the same way that Carson Wentz doesn't, because you can't unteach that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Richardson's still a rookie.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Those were the bin games. Now it's just the straight up paddling games. So I'm going to start with the Panthers at the Commanders. Jayden Daniels may have left this game early due to a rib issue, but there was no chance of the Commanders slipping up against the Panthers team putting in a truly terrible performance, and they've had a few over recent seasons. Andy Dalton was picked 6 by Dante Fowler on the opening drive. He would throw another pick before the end of the first quarter. Marcus Mariota was doing his best Jayden Daniels impression, and the good times continued for Brian Robinson, wreaking havoc on the ground, and tight ends Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott getting a score. Chuba Hubbard stopped the shutout, but only just. Final score was the Panthers 7, Commanders 40.
That's a paddling.
It was bad. It was as bad as I can remember for the Panthers, but the Panthers have got the Broncos next week, which means almost certainly they're going to win.
I look forward to you picking the Panthers.
I can't think of a time when I've seen a starting quarterback get injured, a backup come in, and a team still be dominated to the extent that they have. I'm sure there are occasions, just they're not springing to mind. I was thinking about this early today. It was woeful.
Considering that's the first game Marcus Mariota has played in probably a year or more.
Yeah.
So comfortable, it was ridiculous. I mean, we've said over the last couple of seasons, 3 seasons even, that he is the best backup in the league. And that just goes and shows it. It's almost an indictment of how bad the Panthers were, but also I think some credit needs to go to Mariota that he's still good enough to be able to just walk in there and hit a 70% completion, and his numbers aren't gaudy. It's 200 and something yards and a couple of touchdowns, but he didn't need to be. He was efficient. He did what he needed to do when he needed to do it, and he's almost the perfect complement for Jayden Daniels because he's a similar kind of player, so they don't have to massively change the playbook to bring him in and let him play. So, this was a good team shellacking a bad team, as it should have been. But I think there were probably a few nervous people when Daniels went out and Mariota came in going, oh, is this going to turn the tide, etc., etc. But no, it was just business as usual. And that's the sign of a great team.
This is going to sound weird to say, but Washington making very good, sensible choices and covering.
It's unusual.
It's unusual, but you got to think they lost potentially their best player on defense, Jonathan Allen, who I'm a massive, massive fan on. Didn't notice because they brought in players who could, Daron Payne. What a game he had, by the way. But going
Darren.
back to Marcus Mariota, Darren Payne. It's normally me that says that.
Oh no, I reversed it on you.
No, I know.
You finally said it right.
No, I know. It's the first time on this podcast I've ever said his name right as
So I
well.
had to say it wrong for you.
Yeah. The thing that I'd say about Marcus Mariota is he's earned himself a contract for at least the next 3 seasons with that one performance, improving that he can come in and just play. It makes no difference.
He owes
Washington don't
50
sign
for
him.
you,
isn't it?
a bottle
Someone
of
else
wine or
will.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Carolina might sign him as a starter. Who knows?
Well, yeah. So Dalton's out in the next game. He had a car crash, couldn't hold on to the steering wheel. So Bryce Young is going to be back in and playing for that one.
Don't know how much of a difference it's going to make.
Nah. On to the next paddling, and that was the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. The good news for the Giants was that Malik Nabers was back from his concussion and VIP area. The bad news was that they had traded Saquon Barkley to the Eagles during the offseason. He went off for 17 carries for 176 yards and a touchdown, exactly 100 more rushing yards than the Giants managed in this one. A couple of tush pushes for Jalen Hurts and a pass to A.J. Brown made some very happy Eagles fans. Final score was the Eagles 28, Giants 3.
Can I be controversial for a second?
No,
I think
well,
the Giants. I think the Giants might be the best team to watch in the NFL, and I'm not joking because their defense, their pass rush is phenomenal. Like they get to quarterbacks, they pressure them, they destroy them. There was one point where Jalen Hurts went running backwards and he got smashed by like 3 or 4 people. It's incredible. So on defense, they're great to watch for that reason. They're so bad on offense. It's good to watch because you don't know what's going to happen. Do you remember sensible soccer? Do you remember sensible soccer from the 90s where you spin a player and the ball goes off in one direction and you don't know where it's going to go? Is it a lateral? Is it a Hail Mary? No one knows. Neither does the quarterback. It's just entertaining. So yeah, the Giants might actually be, in a weird way, the best team to watch in the NFL.
There were 13 sacks in this game. It was the first half was just brutality for offenses.
Sexy Dexy was amazing as well.
I think I can't remember exactly. I think Eagles end up with 8 of them and the Giants 5 or something.
And Kayvon Thibodeau was out. He
Thibodeau
wasn't
was
even
out
in.
as well.
Crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean it was the Barkley game, wasn't it? I mean he was definitely smashing into people as often as he could, trying to prove the point. So
it was good for the Eagles because they're able to put everything together and actually go, right, these are the pieces we got. This is the football we know we can play.
Now, bollocks, Eagles were on a bye again. What are you talking about? They played another easy team and went through them. I'm not having that. They put nothing together.
You have to take it with a pinch of salt. It's the Giants, but
yeah, I know.
They had to go into MetLife and play a division rival and absolutely stomped them. So, yeah,
more than stomped.
It's a stay of execution maybe for Nick Sirianni. But there we go.
Oh, I hope he signs a new 5-year deal with a no release clause.
Yeah. The final paddling comes with the Titans at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills took the Titans to the woodshed in the second half after going into halftime surprisingly down 10-7, thanks to Mason Rudolph being the Titans quarterback and getting a score to Nick Westbrook-Akine. The Bills scored on all 5 second half drives. Scores for Ty Johnson, my guy Ray Davis returning from injury James Cook, and new boy Amari Cooper. Natural order restored, and the final score was the Titans 10, Bills 34.
Ooh, you better believe that's a paddling.
I remember absolutely nothing about this game.
And that says
Neither do I. I was going to talk generally about the two teams. Have the Bills fixed Josh Allen? Because this season he's not playing hero ball. He's playing within himself. He's got the highest QBR out of any quarterback in the league, and he's not thrown an interception yet. Have they just said
miserable?
Look, he does. I agree. I agree.
He looks like bored out of his mind.
He looks like a soccer dad who's got 5 kids and just has to run errands all day. That's all he has to do. Basically, look, yes, exactly. Get in your Volvo and just go shopping, drive into Tesco and go to work and work in an insurance company. That's all you need to do.
He's going to snap.
There's going to be one game where he's going to get 14 and yeah, it's going to be incredible to watch.
I'm going to catch up.
That's all I got for this game. Sorry, man.
Yeah, it was. I mean, first half was not a paddling in the slightest, and then second half, Bills just obviously had a stern word in the locker room, and next 5 drives, 5 scores. So if it's as easy as that, I might start my own franchise.
The Finns.
Not to be confused with another team.
No.
no.
Some copyright infringement there. What city would you be based in? Where are you going for it?
Oh, that is a great question.
San Antonio. Good nightlife.
San Antonio's the one, isn't it?
Good nightlife there.
There we go.
That's in Texas, Finn, just so you know.
Yes. I know their basketball teams. I know where it is.
Yeah.
Let's move on from the Paddle-ins. They were there for a reason. There were 2 Monday night games. The first one was the Ravens at the Buccaneers. It all started so well for Tampa Bay. A 10-7 lead and driving into the red zone again. But with under 7 minutes in the first half, Mike Evans goes out injured and Baker throws a pick in the end zone. 4 plays later, and Justice Hill streaking into the Bucs end zone to take the lead for Baltimore. The Ravens would pile on the next 20 points with scores for Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. Rashad White got one back for Tampa before Jordan Whitehead made a business decision in not stopping Derrick Henry from breaking the goal line for the Ravens one more time. The Bucs would rally with another Rashad White touchdown and one from Bucky Irving, but on the final drive, Bucs' other star receiver Chris Godwin was taken out with a broken ankle. Those dirty, dirty Ravens. The final score was the Ravens. I'm only joking.
You can't help yourself.
The Ravens 41, the Buccaneers 31.
Do you know what I mentioned about the Chiefs earlier on in them doing the right things in key moments? Baker feels like he's doing a bit of the opposite this season. He's playing brilliantly pretty much all game, and then when it's come into those key moments, he's just getting a bit of a brain fart. Maybe I'm being a slightly too harsh. It's just so many times this season. He's just done the wrong thing at the wrong time. He's not throwing a pick, when he's on his own 30-yard line. He's doing it in the red zone, or he's going 4 and out, and when you need a key drive and little things like that. It's just chemo. I still think he's a good quarterback. We know Hannah loves him, so I'm not going to go too hard on him, but I think he's still the right man for them. I think he's better than he's currently showing.
I agree with that. I think that we've seen Ravens are on a hot streak now. Seems that the offense is now gelled to the point where we thought it would. They are probably going to have some concerns over the defense. Obviously, they had a big clear out in the off season of coaching staff and backroom staff.
Players as well.
So I think that's their concern at the moment, that they are allowing teams to put up a hefty slog of points against them. But at the same time, it's somewhat of a moot point because they know that offense can just go and outscore near enough anyone. The concern will be when the offense isn't quite firing for whatever reason, whether they get struck by injuries or whatever it is, then the concern is, okay, so if we can't score points, now we've got to stop someone, but we can't. So a few things for the higher ups to worry themselves about, but in the whole, it's they know they can score points and win games, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Yeah, you're not going to lose too many games when you're passing for 250 yards and you're running for 250 yards. That's just
exactly.
If you ever want balance in an NFL team, then the Ravens against the Bucs on Monday were it. I suppose the question now is how stupid does everyone look that we're getting really concerned when the Ravens were 0-2 and going into Dallas going, this is a must-win game if they don't win.
What happened to that team? I like that team.
You know what I mean?
I really like that team.
Do you know what I am looking forward to? In a couple of weeks when the Ravens play the Steelers, because you've got a power run offense against a power defense. I'm really looking forward to that. What I'm looking forward to more is a week before Christmas when they play again, because then the stakes are really going to matter. So let's hope everyone gets fit, because that's a big game. It shouldn't be a 6 p.m. game either. That should be a primetime game.
Well, we're 7-1 against the Ravens, so
there's
only a few teams that can beat the Ravens.
Yeah, that's all right. We keep beating the Chiefs, but grand scheme of things.
Let's all go off history, shall we?
Lionel Messi's never scored a single goal in the Scottish Premier League. Doesn't mean
exactly. Useless.
What's that got to do with anything? I'm talking about a division game.
Historic record don't mean anything. It matters what happens now is what matters.
I suppose this is what you got to do as a Steelers fan. You got to sort of claw at anything.
Cling on to the past.
Oh yeah. With our 5-2 record, I'm clinging on to the past. All right. That's fine. What are we talking about? Just attacking the
some of that
Ravens.
Scottish football.
We were
Something
talking about
irrelevant.
how good the Ravens are.
Oh, let's move on. We've got one more game to go through.
We weren't finished.
Of course, we finished. What does it say? They're crap on defense and they're scoring loads of points on offense.
Just
We
admit
need, to
they're
do,
The
we
good.
need to do a
Just
Patreon
admit they're good.
specific. We need to do a Patreon exclusive on
No,
the on the Ravens.
They're better on offense this season, but they're worse on defense. So the result's the same. They can't win the Super Bowl.
You still can't say the word good.
Let's not say good. Can't do it.
Over 300 episodes we've been doing this podcast for,
Yeah.
Jim. And I think I can count on one hand the number of times you've said anything good about the Ravens.
Oh, you know,
See,
True.
even there,
True.
even there.
that might be true.
Oh.
The last game of week 7 was the Chargers at the Cardinals. And you've got to feel very sorry for Justin Herbert after this one. 349 passing yards and 0 touchdowns. I mean, that's impressive. Relegated to throwing to rookies, tight ends, and Jalen Reagor, the Chargers could only score by the boot of Cameron Dicker. His 5th kick gave them a 1-point lead, but the Cardinals were able to get down the field themselves for the game-winning field goal. Kyler Murray had a great 44-yard touchdown run. Greg Dortch had the only other touchdown earlier in the game. Not a great performance from either side, but the Cards win at home. Final score was the Chargers 15, Cardinals 17.
Gutted.
Yeah.
Absolutely gutted. I thought, here we go.
I was clinging to that Cardinals win for my my picks. I was like, please don't let the Cardinals lose as well. Not my double down.
Not clinging on to that. No. I don't really have much to say about it other than I'm quite disappointed.
This was big boy football, though. It was rough, aggressive football. There was not a lot of finesse in this game.
No.
It was basically there was a fight, and then some football broke out at reasonable points in between.
Everyone realised there was a ball still
A
there.
little bit.
And at that point, Kyler Murray ran down the sideline.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to see Kyler Murray have a fight with Trent Williams. That'd be fun.
You do not want to see that. No boxing body would sanction that fight.
No, there's nothing major on this game other than that we were promised by every media outlet, Fox especially, that the Chargers were going to be brilliant this season because of Harbaugh, and it's just not quite happened or happening yet. I'm sure it will.
Do you remember that meme they did before Joe Burrow when they were going to sign Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell? And it feels like the Chargers have done that meme where they drafted Joe Alt, but they don't have a receiver to throw at. So he's got all day to throw it, but no one's catching it.
Yeah, it's
They need to trade for someone right now. They need to trade for
Bring
someone.
someone in.
Just someone.
as long as it's not
Just
Cooper
anyone.
Cup. God,
I
I
don't
can't
think
be
it's
doing
gonna
with
be
Cooper Cup.
I
I
don't think
can't
it's gonna be
imagine it would be, but
We'll give him little Jordan Humphrey for a first. How does that sound?
Yeah. Big shame for Justin Herbert. He did everything he could do. He was launching balls and zipping them in. The absolute anti Drake May. I mean, the ball was going so quickly. It was hitting its target exactly where it should do. But yeah, just
you'd
keep
pulling your
dropping
hair out though,
balls
wouldn't you, for
yeah.
throwing it for 350 yards but not throwing a touchdown? You'd be absolutely livid.
It's like that
Sabotaged.
season Julio Jones had where he had like 1,200 yards and not a touchdown. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And ended up getting one in the end. But anyway, that's enough about the Chargers and the Cardinals. Can we talk more about the Ravens?
No, let's do the power plays now. Because
They're all Ravens this week, Jim.
I bet
I
they
can say
are as well.
I've only got Ravens.
Oh, that'd be
power play.
amazing. You've
Tomorrow
got to do
when
that one week. It's like where it was 3rd and 4 and they ran for 5 yards. That's a power play for Derrick Henry. Just
Eric Henry
the
was
Ravens.
given the ball, therefore it's power play. Right. Okay, here we go. Hat trick heroes. None this week, surprisingly. Some
I'll
big
find
scores
one.
in there, but no one had more than two touchdowns. So no hat trick heroes. A few honorary mentions. Kalia Davis, the 6'1", 310-pound defensive tackle, getting his pick for the 49ers from a tip ball. Patrick Mahomes' little stop-start run that held the entire 49ers defense in shock and awe, allowing him to get down to the 5-yard line. Ivan Pace's fumble, scoop, and score to give the Vikings the lead over the Lions. Dante Fowler's pick six to set up the Commanders on their way to smashing the Panthers. Charlie Jones's opening kick touchdown for the Bengals, and David Montgomery's spinning one-handed grab and run in the third quarter of the game against the Vikings. Right, off we go. After a slow start, your team is up by 4 heading towards halftime, and your defense is forced a punt. So there's a good opportunity for you to extend your lead. Taking the punt at the 4-yard line, the returner takes off down the middle of the field. Special teams blocking is good. No, it's absolutely amazing. And he passes his own 40 and realizes he only has a punter to beat. Hitting the afterburners down the left sideline, he plunges into the end zone for a little piece of NFL history at Wembley. Congratulations to Parker Washington. That's the first game at Wembley, the first time at Wembley we've had a kick return or a punt return for a touchdown.
It was shocking.
So, yeah. Definitely worthy of a power play, considering the amount of games we've watched where nothing's happened.
True.
Right. Despite what players and coaches may say in the media, never let anyone tell you it's not a revenge game when a player goes back to his old team. A perfect example of this happened on Sunday when, despite being 21-3 up late in the third quarter, Saquon Barkley chose violence against his former Giants teammates. Taking the handoff at his own 5-yard line, the Eagles created a lovely hole and Barkley accelerates through. As he hits the 20, he skips past a tackler. Heading over the 30, he cuts inside another Giant, who gets his hands on him near the 40, hoping to slow him down. While he's waiting for help, the problem is that Barkley is just too strong, and he drags that second, third, and fourth tackler up over the 50-yard line to put the Eagles in perfect position yet again. This was the one play that stood out of Barkley's amazing performance. I think that players and coaches will always play down the fact that players going back to a team, but it matters. It always matters. You want to make a point. And I think Barkley did that in the best way possible on Sunday. Right, onwards and upwards. When you're battling to keep your unbeaten record and you're down 28-20 with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you need to trust your quarterback and start picking up chunks of yards. The problem is you have a 1st and 10 at your own 9-yard line. And in theory, it's your backup quarterback. So you don't want him to do anything silly and give the ball away. You have to execute the play absolutely perfectly. Taking an 8-yard drop, Sam Darnold does precisely that. As the Lions' pass rush closes in, Darnold steps up in the pocket and as the defender's arm gets to him, unleashes a perfectly thrown 50-yard bomb positioned over the cornerback's head to exactly where Jordan Addison has timed his run to. Not bad for a backup quarterback and a number 2 receiver, but it's the excellence of execution that allows for the Vikings to flip the field as they look for the tying score. Reason I went for this one, Justin Jefferson gets all the credit. Addison and Darnold, for a couple of weeks now, have really been on the same page. Their timing is absolutely perfect, and the placement of this pass was just phenomenal. Moving on. Right. Listeners, in about 60 seconds, you may want to turn the volume down on your listening device. Otherwise, you're going to end up being subjected to all kinds of excited noises from Jim. As after weeks of crying, begging, and bribery to get all sorts of mediocre Steelers efforts into the power plays, one of their players has finally done something worthy of inclusion.
Don't do it.
Much as I'd love it to have been Russell Wilson's 5-yard lateral that hit the turf 3 yards behind the receiver, it's not. Down 15-13 early in the third quarter, it's 3rd and 7 from their own 24-yard line. Russell's in shotgun, and there's a trips right bunch formation for the receivers. The ball is snapped, and after only a 3-yard drop, Wilson settles and lets the ball go towards the right sideline, where Pickens has managed to get behind the man coverage. As you'd expect, the ball is poorly thrown and hits the cornerback on the shoulder pad. However, it pops back up in the air instead of falling to the turf. Pickens, realizing he can't be bothered to ask for a trade to a decent team, tries to grab the ball as it falls down. At the same time, the cornerback grabs him and Pickens fumbles the ball back up in the air. Finally shaking off the cornerback from his chest, the receiver, with an almost Davante Adams-like awareness, manages to recapture the ball off the deflections and move the Steelers up the field. It was a phenomenal play from a receiver that, let's be honest, has been much maligned this year for various non-showing, shall we say, non-showings. But yeah, that play was really a testament to what a receiver Pickens could be if he played in a decent team with a decent quarterback. And
he
that's
might
your
Thank
power
you very
play.
much.
I found a hat trick, but it's not the one we want. Brock
Here we
Purdy got
go.
3 interceptions. That's about as
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah,
that's
so did
about as
Gardner
good as I can
Minshew,
find.
but you know.
Oh yeah, I just felt that one. Sorry about that. There is one thing I've just noticed on some breaking news which just popped up on my phone, which I don't know how much of an impact this has. Apparently, for the Browns, Jameis Winston's going to be starting this weekend, but also Kevin Stefanski is apparently being taken off play calling duties, which is normally assigned right before a coach gets sacked. It's been passed to OC Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey was last a play caller in Buffalo, and he got sacked from Buffalo the week they got beat by the Broncos. So yeah, how good was he? So
He's the chump that was smashing the tablet, wasn't he? On
yes, absolutely was.
during the game.
Mm.
So he's now going to be the play caller for Jameis Winston. So all change in Cleveland.
What a great
That'll change
franchise!
it,
What
won't
a
it?
well-run
Times.
franchise. I've always said they've been.
Kevin Stefanski's not the problem. He's a decent coach. He's all right. Why?
Not the answer, but he's not the
No.
problem.
Mm.
No, absolutely not. So he's been any. I've never ever seen it where a head coach has been taken off play calling and they've got stability going on in the future. It just doesn't normally happen. So yeah, all change soon at the
Interesting
Browns,
call.
I guess.
Oh, there we
There we
go.
go.
Thank you very much, Punk, for those amazing power plays. Great to see that
You're
the
most
bribery
welcome.
and
I'm glad you
the
managed to
crying has
control
paid
yourself,
off.
to be honest.
Yeah,
Some sort of
you can't see
bribery.
him
Well,
from
after all this,
can't see it from the waist
extra
down.
wagging of his tongue about a decent
You,
team,
only,
and
you
everything,
only tweeted every play that's the Steelers made for the
Oh,
last
it's
7
it's
weeks.
incessant. If you
Someone's
look at
got
my
to show
Twitter
him.
timeline, it literally is just Steeler fan.
What
You'd
about
think I
this
was a Steeler fan.
Yeah, there's always a chance. You can always
So next
see the
No,
light.
next
trust me,
week,
there really
He's
is.
not deluded.
next
Well.
week against the Panthers, I'm just sending you nothing but Broncos highlights for power plays. So Dave, it's 2-0. Like, shut up! Look at this.
I'll tell you,
Can't
if it's a
wait.
decent sack for a safety, it'll get in.
Mm.
There we go. That was the review for week 7. We'll be back shortly with the week 8 preview pod. But until then, make sure you're checking us out on patreon.com/finaldown. Sign up. It doesn't cost you anything technically to sign up if you don't have to get all the extra stuff that we're going to be doing. But sign up there. You'll get all the notifications of drops at the very least. And if you do give us a couple of pounds a month, you'll get all the extra content as well. So it's worth doing it. It really is. But until next time, though, I've been Jim. That's been Finn. That's been Never Dave. That's been Punk Raider. Thank you very much for listening.